It started like any other light-hearted celebrity segment. The stage was lit, the audience buzzing, cameras rolling. Hollywood star Will Smith was on one end of the couch, cracking jokes and charming the room. On the other end sat President Ibrahim Traoré of BurkinaFaso.com, reserved, wearing a modest suit that looked more practical than presidential. The show's host was riding the energy. With a playful nudge, he turned to Will and said, "Think you'd ever run for president? You'd be up against someone like President Traoré, well, never one to shy away from a laugh," smirked and said, "Well, at least I'd bring some fashion sense." "No offense, Mr. President, but your tailor might have quit halfway through." The crowd erupted. Classic late-night fun, right? Traoré smiled, not awkwardly, not bitterly, just gently. And then something shifted. He leaned in slightly. Not to fire back, not to scold, just to speak. And when he did, the energy in the room fell still. "I don't wear power," he said quietly. "I carry it." The laughter stopped. "In my country," he continued, "there are children who study under trees because there are no classrooms. Some walk 10 miles barefoot just to learn. If I wore a $5,000 suit, I'd be stealing from them. You could hear the air change. You create films that move the world," he told Will. "I make decisions that determine whether children eat, whether families are safe, whether our country can stand on its own." He paused, then added, "If style could heal a broken hospital, I'd dress in gold. No drama, no raised voice, just truth." The room was still, and for a split second, something unexpected happened. Will's smile faded, and his eyes welled up. He looked away, blinking, stunned, not embarrassed, just awakened. The cameras caught it all. But this wasn't another viral gotcha moment. It was something else entirely. Backstage, the mood had changed. Not tense, just quiet. Will sat alone, staring at the floor, sipping water. A producer asked gently, "You all right?" He nodded, but didn't speak. Meanwhile, the internet was already exploding. A 90-second clip titled "Will Smith Silenced by President Traoré" was climbing into the millions. But it wasn't the numbers that mattered. It was the reaction. One person commented that wasn't a clapback. That was dignity with a heartbeat. Another wrote, "I watched this with my dad. We cried together." Later that night, Will walked down the hallway and found President Traoré sitting alone reading a small worn book. He paused, then said softly, "Mr. President." Traoré looked up and smiled. Will's voice cracked. "I needed that. Thank you." They shook hands. And in that handshake, the world saw something more powerful than any speech. Mutual respect to men from two very different worlds meeting on equal ground, not as entertainer and politician, but as human beings. By morning, Traoré's words had circled the globe. News anchors played the clip. Influencers wept. Even networks that rarely mentioned African leaders were suddenly asking, "Who is this man?" The phrase that trended worldwide was simple. When dignity spoke, the world listened. And in the markets of Burkina Faso, you could hear old radios playing the exchange on repeat. Farmers paused to listen. Mothers nodded silently. Children beamed with pride. They saw more than a viral moment. They saw their leader. What started as a quiet, powerful moment on television didn't end when the camera shut off. It kept echoing through living rooms, hospital wards, and even hearts that had forgotten how to feel something real. In the US, Will Smith posted a short video the next day. "I cracked a joke. He gave me wisdom." He said simply, "I've shared rooms with kings, legends, presidents." But this was something else. No bravado, no PR script, just Will humbled. You could hear it. In his voice, this had hit him differently. People noticed. But while the internet buzzed and headlines praised the moment, something else began to stir. Something quieter, deeper, and completely unplanned. Traoré Hadan T set out to go viral, Yet what he said had planted seeds. Not of politics, but of self-reflection. And soon those seeds would take root in the unlikeliest of places. In a modest hospital in Ouagadougou, a little girl named Muna, just 11 years old, was fighting leukemia. She had watched the talk show clip the night before with her mother. Her face lit up, not with laughter, but recognition. "Ma," she whispered, "he's not like the others." Her tiny hands shook as she scribbled a note. "Dear President Traoré, I'm sick. But when I saw you, I forgot the pain for a little while. You made me proud. You didn't yell. You didn't joke back. You spoke like a real papa. Thank you. Wish I could hug you." A nurse, moved to tears by the innocence in the letter, posted it on Twitter. "She has days left," she wrote. But she wanted to thank her president. Within hours, the tweet had millions of views. Across the ocean, in a quiet room at the Burkina Faso embassy in New York, President Traoré read it. For a while, he said nothing. Then, without ceremony, he stood and buttoned his jacket. "Cancel the next meeting," he told his aide. "I need to call a child." At the hospital, the phone rang. Muna's mother picked up, cautious. "Hello." Soft, warm voice responded. "Madame, this is President Ibrahim Traoré. May I speak with your daughter?" The room froze. The nurse covered her mouth. Muna's eyes went wide, full of disbelief. He spoke to her gently, asked about her favorite color, her favorite food. She giggled even through the pain. "Are you really the man from TV?" she asked, whispering. Traoré chuckled. "Yes, little one. But more importantly, I'm your friend." Everyone in the room cried. Not out of sadness, but something else, something sacred. Before hanging up, he told her, "You've done more for this world than many adults ever do. You reminded us what kindness looks like. You're stronger than me, Muna." His voice cracked just slightly. After the call, he sat alone by the window, the hum of the New York traffic lost beneath the weight of that little girl's courage. And in that silence, he made a decision. This wouldn't just be a moment. It would be a mission. He wouldn't be remembered as just a politician who went viral. He'd become the reason people started believing again, in humility, in truth, in each other. Back in the studio, long after the audience had left, Will Smith stood behind the curtain, hands trembling. He was still processing what had happened. The crew didn't say much. No one wanted to break the silence. Will stepped forward. "You meant every word, didn't you?" he asked, his voice low. Traoré nodded. "I don't speak to impress," he said. "I speak because truth should be lived, not performed. No cameras, no lights. Just a men, one raised on applause, the other anchored in service, sharing a moment that was deeper than TV." Traoré looked at Will and gently asked, "You've made the world laugh, Will, but have you ever let it hear your pain?" That one question broke something loose. Will nodded slowly, tears forming in his eyes. And while outside, the clip kept spreading across phones and screens. What was happening inside wasn't about fame anymore. It was about healing. Thousands of miles away, in a quiet Philadelphia living room, Will's mother, Caroline, watched this segment alone. She had seen her son win awards, star in blockbusters, command global attention. But this was different. She sent him a simple text. "You've made movies, baby, but tonight you made meaning. That man, Traoré, he reminded me of your father. Calm, kind, strong. Don't lose this moment." Will sat with her words for a long time. "You made meaning." It echoed inside him louder than the laughter he was used to chasing. And for the first time in years, he let himself cry, not from shame, but from release, from recognition, from remembering that being seen, truly seen, had nothing to do with the spotlight. Fame had always been loud. But now, in the quiet after the storm, Will Smith found himself reaching for something he hadn't touched in years, his notes app. Not to write a joke, not to build a character, but to speak. Not to the world, to one man. The next morning, his Instagram lit up with a post. A photo of President Traoré standing still on the set, face calm, eyes steady. And under it, Will's words, "President Traoré, you didn't clap back. You didn't laugh it off. You handed me truth, and I didn't know how much I needed it. In your stillness, I saw my chaos. In your dignity, I saw the parts of me I forgot to honor. You reminded us a man isn't strong because he's loud, but because he knows how to carry truth without armor. Thank you. I'm learning, and I'm listening." The world heard it. Within hours, millions had shared the post. Celebrities reposted it. News anchors quoted it. Teenagers cried. Parents used it as a lesson. But it wasn't the famous voices that moved President Traoré most. It was the quiet ones. In his office in Ouagadougou, letters arrived in stacks. From Switzerland, from South Africa, from Syria. But one stopped him cold. It was from a 12-year-old boy in Harlem. The last line read, "I want to be calm like you when people laugh at me." Traoré read it slowly, then again, then closed his eyes. He turned to his advisors. "This isn't about what happened on TV," he said. "Something's waking up on the other side of the world." In a small bedroom in Brooklyn, Marcus sat at the edge of his bed, hugging his knees. He'd been bullied again that day, called names, pushed, mocked for wearing shoes with holes. His mother did what she always did, made warm tea and held him, but the ache in his chest wouldn't leave. That night, she scrolled past a clip on her phone. A quiet man was speaking. "The world doesn't need louder men," he said. "It needs quieter hearts with deeper truths." She turned the volume up. Marcus looked up, his body stilled. He replayed the line 10 times. Then, from under his pillow, he pulled out a battered notebook. He scribbled a letter, not knowing if he'd ever send it. "Dear Mr. Traoré, today I was laughed at, but I didn't scream. I remembered your voice. Think that made me strong." He folded it, held it. And for the first time in weeks, he slept through the night. Thousands of miles away, in the hum of a modest office, President Traoré scrolled through the filtered messages his team had gathered. One email made his hand stop. It was a scanned letter, handwritten, the name Marcus. He read it once, twice, a third time. Then he whispered almost to himself, "We lead nations, but sometimes we're just meant to hold one child's pain." He asked for a call to be arranged immediately. At Marcus' school, the counselor called him in. He thought he was in trouble. "Here," she said, handing him a phone. A quiet voice came through the line. "Hello, Marcus. This is Ibrahim Traoré. I read your letter." Marcus froze. "I want you to know, the president said, you are stronger than many grown-ups I've met. You gave me hope today." Marcus cried, not the kind with wailing or noise, but the soft, shaking tears of someone finally being seen. The next day, without press, without cameras, and without warning, Will Smith landed quietly in Ouagadougou. No entourage, no flash, just a man, changed. Traoré greeted him outside a school courtyard, children laughing in the distance. "Didn't expect Hollywood to come so humbly," he said, smiling. Will chuckled, then turned serious. "I didn't come for the cameras," he said. "I came because what you said didn't just touch me. It changed me." They sat beneath. Tree Will pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "This," he said, handing it over, "is a list of every apology I owe to the people I hurt, knowingly or not. To the ones I dismissed or judged or carried my pain into." Traoré took. It read quietly, then looked up. "Healing," he said, "doesn't begin when we fix the world. It begins when we tell the truth to ourselves." As they sat there, a little girl ran up with a flower and handed it to Will. He knelt, smiled, and said, "Thank you." Wasn't a red carpet moment. There was no audience. It's just two men rediscovering what it means to be human. And somewhere, in a dusty barbershop on the edge of Ouagadougou, a group of young men crowded around a tiny radio, listening to the story of calm, of courage. a conversation that crossed oceans. One of them said, "Yo, that's the kind of strength I want to have. Not the kind that shouts, not the kind that flexes. It's the kind that listens, the kind that holds. It's the kind that changes lives." It's quietly. The old television flickered in a dusty barbershop on the outskirts of Ouagadougou. On screen again and again, President Ibrahim Traoré's quiet words echoed not with anger, not with pride, but with something deeper: truth. The young men watching weren't the usual crowd. For politics, they usually joked, argued about football, traded gossip. But today, they were silent. One of them, Idris, wiped his eyes. "This is the first time I've seen a president speak with his soul," he whispered. The barber, an old man who had cut hair through coups and calm alike, nodded slowly. He didn't just speak to Will. He spoke to all of us, the quiet ones, the ones they laugh at for not fitting in. They turned off the TV, not because it bored them, but because they had just seen something pure in a world that too often feels cold. And sometimes silence is the only honest response to something real. 2 days later, a handwritten envelope arrived at the Burkinabe Embassy in Los Angeles. No official seal. Just soft, flowing cursive. Jada Pinkett Smith. She'd watched the clip live. Then again, then again. And she'd cried. Her letter wasn't formal. It was human. "Dear President Traoré, I don't know if you realize what you did, not just to Will, but to millions of men watching who've never been told that dignity doesn't mean domination. With no raised voice, with no performance, you taught the world that calm isn't weakness. It's strength in its purest, most needed form. Thank you." The world was starving for that message, and you fed us something true. President Traoré read it alone. Then, with great care, folded the letter and placed it into his journal. To his aide, he said softly, "We don't need louder speeches. We need louder silence and deeper actions." Cross continents, something unexpected was happening. Clips of Traoré's words were being translated into Arabic, Portuguese, Mandarin, Swahili, French. Not because it was trending, but because people felt they had just witnessed truth, finally given a voice. Psychologists referenced it. Professors taught it. Churches and mosques quoted it. People paused their lives to reflect. Even a late night comedian who had mocked the moment returned on air. "I thought it was just another awkward exchange," he admitted. "But I see now it was history. Quiet history." In Burkina Faso, a local school renamed its library "The Quiet Voice of Truth." It wasn't about Will Smith anymore. It wasn't even about television. It had become something larger, a moment, a symbol, a mirror. 3 days later, without fanfare, Will Smith appeared on a small daytime show in New York. He didn't come to entertain. He came to reflect. His voice trembled. "I've made movies. I've made millions laugh. But I've never had a moment stop me the way he did. When President Traoré looked at me that night, it felt like he saw straight through the performance, not just mine, but the one the world asks us all to put on every day." He paused. He reminded me what it means to be a man. Not through power, but through peace. The room didn't clap. It just breathed. And a few people wiped tears from their eyes without a sound. That night, Traoré's assistant rushed into his office. "Mr. President," he said, holding up his phone. "It's from Will." The message was short, but raw. "I've spoken with my heart to the world, but I need to speak with yours. I'd like to come to Ouagadougou, not as an actor, just as a man." Traoré smiled gently. "Let him come," he said. "Let him see where truth grows, not in palaces, but in pain." The next morning, Will landed in Burkina Faso. No red carpet, no crowd. Just President Traoré waiting outside the terminal in a plain shirt, hand extended. They embraced. No words, just an understanding. To men, 2 different worlds. It's one shared awakening. On the 6th day, an impromptu press gathering was held outside a youth center in the heart of Ouagadougou. No podiums. Dust, sun, and dust and sincerity. Will stood beside Traoré. He took a breath. His voice was steady. This man didn't clap back. He didn't fight fire with fire. He showed me and maybe all of us what dignity really looks like when the world expects pride. He paused, eyes glassy. If you're watching this, ask yourself, when was the last time you listened with your heart? Traoré stepped forward, speaking quietly, almost to the wind. We don't heal by mocking. We heal when we learn to recognize the wounds in each other. No applause, no slogans, just silence. The kind that means people aren't just hearing, they're feeling. Within 24 hours, the clip reached over 40 million views. But more importantly, it reached living rooms, it reached schools, it reached people who had forgotten what truth feels like. Dear viewer, if this story touched something in you, if even one line made you pause or breathe differently, like, share, subscribe, not just for the algorithm, but for the feeling. Drop a comment below. What moment moved you the most? Let this not be the end. Let it be the start of something quieter, something stronger, something real.